move it back a little bit so they're not like up my nose. Hi guys. I'm going to start with a story, and this story I might have shared with some of you already, but it's a good one. It's worth repeating. It's the story of the purple jacket people. Just raise your hand if you heard me share that story. Just 2 of you? Okay, good. 3. Okay, worth repeating. The story is there is a king, and the king has a gorgeous, beautiful kingdom, and he's masterful. He's sitting on his throne, everything is great. He's independently wealthy. He can make any decisions he wants for his kingdom. And he starts noticing that his kingdom starts fraying at the seams. There is crime, there is things that are happening, immorality. He's hearing the news and he is getting so upset because he built this kingdom to be good. That's all he wanted. He did this from the goodness of his heart. He wanted to have a moral utopian society. And that's why he built this kingdom. So after a while, he can't take it anymore. And he literally calls his advisors and he says, I don't need this. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm out. I'm going to empty my treasury. It's all mine. I could just pick up in the middle of the night. And has that ever happened before? No king has ever left his kingdom, right? It's not very typical. And he threats and he tells them and no one listens. And finally, one morning they wake up and the king is gone. He has emptied the treasury. He has vanished in the middle of the night. And he goes and he takes a few of his advisors and he wants to start again. He wants to build a new kingdom. His advisors tell him, there is a problem. You see, you're behind your castle, your palace gates. You're such a good, benevolent, kind-hearted king, but no one sees you. So he said, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to build this kingdom in order to come to this new kingdom that's going to have the best quality of life and everything you could ever hope for. It's going to be such a great place to raise a family. In order to get in, you need to sign that you are going to be moral, you're going to be wholesome, you're going to be loving, you're going to be kind, you're going to be everything. And that's what he does. He puts out applications, flooded with applications. There's a waiting list the size of, Gazoo, and this new kingdom starts getting populated. And it's going well. The king is sitting in his castle. He's reading his newspaper, drinking his coffee every morning, and he sees the news, boy rescues cat from tree, and man returns purse to lady. And, just kind acts and goodness and initiatives and all the good things. And he's like, oh, it worked. This is amazing, amazing, amazing. Eventually, after time, he sees armed robbery at the 7-Eleven or, some other fraud in the newspaper. And he's reading this and he's thinking, wait, this is a problem. So he calls his advisors. He says, let's nip this in the bud. I'm not going there. I'm not leaving again. I can't do this again. And the advisors tell him, appoint for yourself purple jacket people. Let them be your ambassadors because the people in your kingdom don't see you. You're behind the castle walls. They never get to interact with you. They don't know that you're not able to teach them face to face. You need ambassadors. So the king says, that's a great idea. And he has his, tailors make up these gorgeous purple robes and he hands them out to his top people. And they are now on the ground teaching the king's word. But what happens after a while? Human nature. The purple jacket people are messing up. And not only are they messing up, but instead of being the example, they're the example. Well, if the purple jacket people are doing it, then it would be okay for me to do it, right? It gets flipped. And the king says, what am I supposed to do? Should I take the purple jackets off of these people at this point? It makes no difference. People already know who they are. They represent me, and this is terrible. Okay, so it sounds like a pretty dark story. Who are the purple jacket people? The Jewish people. God started the world. We just started the Torah last week, Bereshit, the creation. He had such high hopes for mankind. And it didn't take long, just the first few verses of the Torah, and Adam messes up. Adam and Eve, they're expelled from the Garden of Eden. Everything changes. Sin is there's just so much pain, suffering, toil that's brought into the world through that. It could have been a utopia. Gan Eden was utopia. Okay, we get back up on our feet. Second Parsha, Parshat Noah. What happens in Parshat Noah? There's corruption. There's corruption between who? Everybody, between man and his fellow man. And in our Torah portion that we learned this Shabbat, there's so much there to discuss that we didn't even get to the end of the Torah portion, when after we get back up and we realize, okay, we're going to do this again. God is starting the world anew, right? Noah and his family, the only good people, are going to rebuild the world. In the end of that same Torah portion, man messes up again. What's the story in the end of Parshat Noah? The sons of the drinking. We spoke about that in this week's Torah portion. We didn't get to the other part, the Tower of Babel, right? Where the people of the world wanted to rebel against who? Against God. So first you have this example where it's man, corruption against man, and God says, I can't handle this. We have to destroy the world and start again. And then after we get back up and we're like, we're doing this again, corruption. But this time it's man between God. And God does not destroy the world. Interesting to see. Yes, God promised he would never destroy the world, but still, the way God deals with it, it's almost as if God is saying, I care so much, maybe even more, how you deal with your fellow, how you interact in this world. That's why I put you here, to be my emissaries, to interact well with each other. I'll take myself out of the picture. I'll use my humility. God is very humble in that way. And he says, it's not about me. I just want you guys to do what you need to do in this world. And that's the topic that we're going to be talking about, which is between man and his fellow man, which is so vital and so important and not emphasized enough. Because when we think about being a super Jew, what's a super Jew in your mind, Laura? Like, give me an example. Like, who's a super Jew? A religious Jew. Okay, so that's someone that is observing rituals, right? And Adrienne Gold, she says the word spiritual is actually a compound word, spirit and ritual. Like, you could say, I'm spiritual, but if you don't have ritual, you can't really be spiritual. You need to have something to tie you down, something to hold you. You can't just be like, on a mountaintop, I'm spiritual. There needs to be a little bit more to anchor you to something. So you're saying, in your mind, super Jew is someone that is doing all the rituals. What if they don't have the spirit? What if they're lacking in this realm, bein adam lechavero, between man and fellow man? Then they're not doing too well. And I'll give you guys an example that I read in this book. It's an example of Sukkot, which we just came out of. This is a law in the Rambam, Maimonides. It says, a family is obligated to observe the Yamim Tovim, the holidays, and to be happy and to be in good cheer, he and his family. Now, while a person eats and drinks, he is obligated to feed the convert, the orphan, the widow, and all the impoverished. So if someone locks the doors of his courtyard and he's eating and drinking with his family, but does not feed the impoverished, this is not rejoicing of mitzvah, but rejoicing of his stomach. So we are in a very complicated situation, because does anyone agree with Laura, by the way, when you think super Jew, you think like very pious? No, what are you thinking? What's super Jew for you?
Yeah, no, because I do know some very religious people. Somebody once used to use the wrong word. That somebody once said to me, there's some people that not many words, just being rigid about the religion, but not feeling it in the issues, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Love that, love that.
To me, it's more a deep feeling. Like, you don't have to necessarily be reading Torah every day, but following the feelings of which are following the love and the.
Okay, well, you hit it right on the head.
I thank you.
Thank you, as usual, Deborah. But I'll just tell you two other things that is written down in the Jewish law. Okay, so it talks about prayer, for example. So did you know that prayer is communication with the divine. Now, after you've prayed, you are supposed to feel different than before you've prayed, because it is supposed to touch you in the heart, right? It's called avoda shebelev. It's heart work. So if you just mumble the words, religiosity, or just going through the motions, you actually have not prayed. Okay. And another example over here is Shabbos. Shabbos is described in the prophets and all the different books of the prophets as a day when a person divests himself of his personal interests, a day that teaches us idealism and selflessness. When Shabbos is over, a person should feel a bit more idealistic than at its start, and should be filled with a resolve to hold on to that idealism and spirituality the entire week. If he feels no such positive feelings and emotions, then he has missed Shabbos. This is like, I keep Shabbos and this is Musar, this is rebuke to me. It really is, because you could keep it and you could totally miss it. And we do this all the time. So this great sage, Rabbeinu Yonah, he teaches us that a person who does not constantly and actively seek peace between people is missing the boat. He's devoid. He's spiritually missing what's most important. Okay, so I hope that here's some beautiful quotes. Anyone who performs tzedakah, charity, and mishpat is good judgment, is considered as if he has filled the world with kindness. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai explains in the Holy Zohar, like the mystical teachings, that all God's revelation and his attributes is called love. The mitzvot between man and man are mitzvos of the Torah, like all the mitzvos, and anyone who professes to be religious must be meticulous in their details, but they are much more. They serve as a barometer of a person's religiosity. So it's not only what you see, it's what's going on much beyond that. Closeness to God inherently means feeling love for both God and his creatures, and developing a personality that loves tzedakah and mishpat. Above all, these mitzvot are the area where the human being reflects the divine attributes by practicing them in his relationships with his fellow man. This is the great purpose of the holy nation, to immerse in the study of the ways of God and apply them to life. Okay, so I think that is enough to get started on. So I'd like to do an exercise now. Everyone has a piece of paper in front of them and a pen. Do you need one? I have. You could do it on your phone also. We have paper over here. Stacy, maybe you'll pass some back. Jen and Tammy and hi. And if you guys have a pen, great. If you could take your paper and just fold it into two columns, okay? Those of you that are on, I have 10 of you over here. Oh, my mom is on even. Okay. Mom. Okay. Hey guys, take a piece of paper, split it down, okay? Write top 10, okay? Now, just for fun, that's great. You're good. I would do it the long way because it might be a long list, but yeah, that's perfect. Okay, I put in Mr. Google. You need a pen? Pen? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have a box of pens coming around. Anyone else need a pen? You guys are good? Okay, pens down there. Okay, so just for fun, I put into Rabbi Google this morning, because he's totally Rabbi Google, if you have any questions. By the way, I stumped him yesterday. He doesn't know everything. It turns out that the Torah has all the answers. Rabbi Google, he does pretty well. So I put into Rabbi Google top 10, and I wanted to see what would come up. What do you guys think came up? Well, you know how you start Googling and then it guesses, right? Or like, what's the most popular search? So top 10 came up, tons of lists of celebrities, of people. Okay, and we all know who the top 10 are, all the musicians, right? We all know all the culture, all the stuff. But what I was looking for, and not that I needed to Google it, but just for fun, top 10 commandments. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you guys to do now, and this is actually a beautiful, easy mnemonic device that I learned from Lori Palatnik. I'll teach it to you in 2 minutes. You'll know it for the rest of your life. You won't forget it, and you can teach it over. Okay, so but what I want you to do is I want you to put the first 5 in one column, and then we're going to go over to the next column. Okay, so, and shout it out. Don't be shy. What is the first commandment? One God. Anochi Hashem. Put it down. First column. One God. Don't give all the answers, Paula. Oh, it's good. It's a good one. Okay, 2. What's the second commandment? It has to do with the number 2. There are no 2 gods. Third commandment has to do with the number 3. OMG. Do not say God's name in vain. So you can say OMG, but we don't use the word God even lightly, right? Some people will say, oh my goodness, which I don't like because it's kind of like, no, you're talking about it's oh my God, but we don't want to, some people don't use oh my goodness, oh my gosh, like if you don't want to say God, there's different ways of saying it, but we have to be careful not to say God's name in vain. And what it's really gearing us for is not saying the holy names of God in vain. We don't use, for teaching, I could teach it here, the word Adonai, which we say in prayers, or Elohim, right? Those are words, and I will only say it in teaching or actually in prayer, but I won't use those words lightly. You know, even if I'm just singing a song and it has those words, I'll say Elohim or Hashem, right? Different ways, because we're very careful not to use God's name in vain. That's the third one, OMG, okay? Fourth one, 2 and 2. Anyone other than Paula want to guess? Shabbos. 2 candles, 2 challahs, Shabbat. Now the 5th one is a huge question mark. Okay, and we'll get to the question mark after. But the 5th one is your hand, a patch. You better honor your parents, or else they might give you a patch. None of us would ever give our kids a patch nowadays. But okay, in the olden days, did anyone ever get a patch? My mother is on, so I can't say anything. But no, I don't think I was ever patched. In the olden days, I mean, my husband grew up in South Africa. It was definitely a thing, right? To really come down hard on your kids, right, Stacey? So, and we're paying for it in therapy till today. Okay, so 5 is honor your parents. Okay, that one is a question mark, circle it. We're gonna go to the second column. Okay, number 6. Anyone? So how are we doing so far? Like if this was a multi, like 1 out of 10, what you guys got so far? How are we doing? Celebrities? 1. Okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, we'll take it. You're all gonna know it after this. Okay, next column. Number 6 is a 6-shooter. Do not murder. Number 7, Lori Palatnik says, 7 rhymes with heaven and marriages are made in heaven. That's how we teach it to young kids, right? But the other way that Lori taught it is 7 is like the 7-year itch. Do not commit adultery. Okay, it used to be the 7-year itch. Now it's actually the 4-year itch. Okay, it's changed over the decades. Okay, so 7 rhymes with heaven. Marriages are made in heaven. Do not commit adultery. That's number 7. Number 8. Anyone want to guess? So 8 on its side is handcuffs. Do not steal. Do not steal or you will be taken away in handcuffs. Number 9, okay, 9 is a false 6. Okay, 9 and 6, right? Do not be a false testimony. Do not lie, but do not testify falsely, even more than lying, to the highest degree. And the final one, number 10, Yes, covet. So you could think of it like 10 fingers, like you covet your neighbor's, I don't know, lawnmower. I don't know what could you covet your neighbor's wife is the example in the Torah, right? When you're jealous of what someone else has and you can't have it, that one is considered very, very severe because it shows that you lack faith in God, that you have everything that you need for your life. You don't need what your neighbor has. So coveting is actually very, it's very frowned upon. Obviously, all of these are very, very severe because these are the top 10 that God gave us. Okay, so now question, I want you guys to look at this list, okay? And I want you to tell me 1/2 of the list is between man and God, and the other half is between man and man. Which side is which? First side is between man and God, okay? And the second side between man and man. There's a question that I want you all to have. I asked you to circle it. Yes? Okay, right, the do nots. Okay, great. Yes, thank you. Positive, right? And actually, here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do want to, does anyone know how many positive and how many negative mitzvot we have in the Torah? So 613 is the grand total. Here, I think I wrote it down. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. So there's 613 total. 365 are negative. 365, one for each day, are negative, and 248 are positive. By the way, the number 248 we have this teaching that it represents every single limb in the human body. 248, that number is all the limbs, all the ligaments, all the different tenus in a human body. 248. That's the number of positive commandments. This is like sages. This is not me. I didn't there's no original information here. It's all from like the Torah and like sages from thousands of years ago. I did not make any of this up. 248 positive, 365 negative. And just to let me just do some trivia over here. How many of them do we observe today? Not all. Okay, how come not all, Marilyn? Right, we can't observe the laws of Shemitah, even though David and Ali are observing the laws of Shemitah, of leaving the land fallow for a year this year. We can't do them because we're not living in the land. So there are a lot of Israel-bound mitzvot and temple time mitzvot, right? None of us could do them. Not even if you're living right in the old city, right next to where the temple was, you still can't do them, right? Okay, any other reasons why, and what other mitzvot we can't do? Why couldn't we observe all of them? So that is a good question. Maybe we don't understand all of them. So I want to get into that. Can we talk about that for a minute? Okay, so of the 613 mitzvot, some of them are called hukim and some are called mishpatim, okay? A chok is something that we don't understand. Like, Sue, do you understand why we're not allowed to wear a garment with wool and linen together? It's a chok. You're never allowed to wear a garment with wool and linen together. In fact, when we buy, when I buy a cashmere, Marilyn, we went shopping last week, I bought a cashmere sweater. So before I wear it, I have to actually get it checked to make sure there is no linen. Sometimes they use linen to strengthen like buttonholes or collars. So there's a whole process, and thank God my husband knows how to do it. But you have to take a thread out of it. He'll burn the thread and smell it. He'll be able to tell what fiber it is. It's not everyone knows how to do this. No. Men's suits are the typical place where you'll find shatnez because they very often use linen to strengthen collars and buttonholes and stuff. So that's what you're thinking. But also in my cashmere sweater, I won't wear it until I get it checked. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. That there was no linen. That's amazing. Okay, so that's like the typical example of a mitzvah that we could never understand. We still are obligated to observe it. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a mishpat, okay? There is a mitzvah, one of the 613, that says you must shoo a mother bird away from its nest before you take the eggs. Do we understand that mitzvah? Yes, sensitivity. Tsar balei chayim, not to make an animal suffer. The emotions of a bird is important to us, okay? So most of the mitzvot, we could pull, we could derive a very sweet taste from. We could understand it, okay? And we call them ta'amei ha-mitzvot, like reasons, tastes that, oh, it makes sense, because we like to justify what we do. So let me give you another example, and I want you guys to tell me which category it falls into. Giving charity, chok or mishpat? Mishpat, makes sense. Moral society, we all need to give, we want, right? Okay. Not touching, okay, well, I was gonna say, okay, becoming impure when you touch or come in contact to a dead body. Do we understand that? Yeah. Is that a chok? We understand it? Or a mishpat, something that, oh, it makes sense? What do you guys think? You don't think we can't understand that. We can't see it. We don't see purity. We don't see impurity. We don't see those things. So technically, you're right. We don't understand it. Here's another one that maybe we understand a little bit of it. Kosher. Is that a chok or a mishpat? Mishpat, meaning you could understand why we should eat kosher, because we have so much science now that tells us the bottom dwellers are not good for us. The bottom dwellers of the ocean, the crabs, the shrimp, they're not good for us. Or the pig is like the animal that right? We have what we call ta'amei ha-mitzvot, which means taste. Like, oh, it makes sense. But actually, kosher is a chok. We don't understand it. Why these animals are not, I mean, we come up with reasons to kind of justify, but it's a chok. There are. Sensitivity, right? One of the prohibitions about kosher is in Hebrew, lo tigadel gdi im chalev imo. Do not cook the young calf or lamb in its mother's milk. There's a sensitivity, like even though the animal is dead and it's being cooked and we're allowed to eat meat, we should feel a sensitivity, right? So we could understand parts of it, but there's a lot that we don't understand. So Marilyn, this is a tangent on your question. Do we not fulfill the mitzvot that we don't understand? We still try to uphold them to the highest degree. So that's not why we don't do all 613. We can't do all 613. Some are for men only, some are for women only. Some are for if you're married, some are when you're getting divorced. Some are when you have a king that's ruling over your country. And some are when, I don't know, give me another one. When you're having a baby. There are a few laws about that. Okay. I'm wondering if there are laws in the Torah about after you have a baby. Right. Yes, and that doesn't come to everybody. Right. So yes, so there's so many different scenarios. So who wants to take a stab at guessing how many mitzvot we have today? Out of the 613, how many? I don't even know exactly, but it's around 250. And you can't observe them all. But I'm telling you right now, I know 90% of the ladies that are sitting in front of me, most of you observe most of them. I promise you that. Now I want you to take your two sides and I want you to ask a question. There's one that doesn't belong. Like, you know that game, like which one doesn't belong? Okay, so one of them is in the wrong column. It seems. Which one? Number 4. Number 5, honor your parents. You would think that should be in the column of between man and his fellow man. Why is that between man and God? What do you say? Yeah, like God, our Father in heaven, and God could have put us into this world in any way, shape, or form, but it's a paradigm for us to understand how to love and how to fear someone that's bigger than us. So the parent one, it kind of goes in both realms, because when you honor your parents, you honor God. You honor that you were created. This is your miniature creator, right? God is the creator, but your parent was your creator as well, brought you into this world. Okay. So I want you to add on to these two columns, and I'm going to give you guys some different mitzvot. And I want, before you write it down, you tell me and you put it. So on the top of top, you have between man and man, well, between man and God in the first column, between man and man. Okay, so here's some more. Welcoming guests. Man and man. Okay. Visiting the sick. Visiting the sick. Okay, so here's where it gets complicated. Okay, so I want you, okay, so I just explained how, like, with parents, right? It's like almost as if we're honoring physical beings, but it's also honoring God. So that's why the lines are blurred a little bit, because so much of being Adam Lechaviro, so much about our interpersonal relationships has to do with how we honor God, because every human being was created in the image of God. Every single human being has divinity, a divine spark of God within them. So when we disgrace someone, embarrass someone, hurt someone, scam someone, we're scamming God. So don't go so deep on me. Let's just try. And it's a hard thing. I actually was looking in many sources. How many mitzvot do we have between man and man? And how many between man and God? And there's actually no answer, because so many of them are blurry. So let's just try our best to get through some. Okay, so we said kosher. Is kosher between man and man, man and God? Man and God. Okay, so bein adam lemakom. Makom, by the way, this is how it's brought down. Bein adam lechaviro, between man and his friend. Between man, bein adam lemakom. Anyone know what that word is? Place. So what it is, it's another way that we describe God, the omnipresent. Okay. So the hamakom yenachem etchem, God, the omnipresent should comfort you. We'll say that at a Shiva house. So that is one of the terms that we use for God. Hamakom, the place, the omnipresent. Something I say to myself whenever I'm in a pinch, I say these words: Ein od milvado. There's nothing besides for God. Like if I'm scared or I'm having a moment, I just say, it's all you, Hashem. So the omnipresent, God, there's so many ways of talking to God or about God. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we could say it, not using God's name in vain. Hamako. Okay, so bein adam l'chavero, bein adam l'mako. Okay, here's another one. This is such a hard one. To rest on Shabbat. So it's actually, this is one of the 613, to rest on Shabbat. It's funny, when I said this is a really hard one, I was joking, because like, who doesn't like resting? We all need to rest, but it actually is a very hard one. We're commanded to rest on Shabbat, right? So is that between man and man, man and God? Man and God, no one knows, right? Just you and him, okay? Here's another one, to rejoice on festivals, one of the 613. God commands us to rejoice. Man and God, okay? Because it's your own personal rejoicing. And sometimes you need to dig deep if you're alone or you're not feeling happy. But there's a mitzvah to rejoice. Okay, here's another one. Oh, man and man. Man and man. Okay, here's another one. Comforting mourners. Man and man. Good. Gladdening a bride and groom. One of the highest held mitzvot in the Torah. Man and man. Okay, good. What? Gladdening. Misameach hatan v'kala. Bringing joy to a bride and groom is one of the highest held mitzvot in the Torah. Did you know that? And there's another one about it, which is, hold on, I wrote this down. I don't know if I write it down, but it's making sure there's two mitzvot about it. One is bringing joy to them, and one is taking care of a bride and groom's needs, like hachnasat kala, it's called, giving charity to help a bride or groom get on their feet. It's a very big one. Let's see. Okay, this is where we're getting to our work that we're going to be doing a lot of over this course. Do not take revenge. Which one is that? Clearly, man and man. Okay. Another one. Do not bear a grudge. Man and man. Okay, here's another one. Learn Torah. It's a mitzvah. What do you think? Man and God. Okay. And in the same breath, after it says to learn Torah, it says to teach Torah. Is that man and man or man and God? I actually think it's on the category of man and man, because we're supposed to be God's emissaries, right? We're those purple jacket people. So but once again, I don't know. It's not 100% sure. Some of them are very clear, very, very clear, and some of them are blurred. Imitate God's good, upright ways. That's one of the mitzvot. Where does that fall? It's in between, right? Because if we do that between us and God, and we're imitating God's ways and learning about him and all that, then we will be able to interact so much better between man and our fellow man. So once again, in between, but I would put that on between man and God, that we're imitating God's ways. Okay, here's another. We have a few symbols in Judaism. We have mezuzah, tefillin, tzitzit, brit milah. These are all separate mitzvot, okay? Circumcision on the body, all these symbols and signs, mezuzah on the door, the fringes, tzitzit, a talit. All of these things, are those between man and man or man and God? Man and God, okay? They're all symbols, like a brit, a covenant between us and God. Okay, good. Now, maybe I'll do one or two more. Okay, this is a really hard one, but we're going to talk a lot about this in this course. There is a mitzvah to give rebuke to someone that sins. This is actually the hardest mitzvah, and our sages have said it's very complicated, because you're not allowed to give rebuke if it's not going to be listened to, or if it's going to hurt someone, or if it's going to turn someone away. You cannot give rebuke. Okay, so rebuke, that would be between man and man. Okay, so that is one of the things we're going to be speaking about. What? Rebuke. Giving rebuke to a sinner. Like if someone is doing something so wrong, you have an obligation. This is one of the 613 mitzvot, to give rebuke. And in Hebrew we say, Hocheach tochiach et amitecha. You must give rebuke and tochacha to someone in your nation. You can't just turn a blind eye.
What do you mean?
Okay, I'm totally making up an example. Yeah. Make up a crazy example. If I hear, God forbid, my neighbor screaming at his poor wife day and night, and they're from my nation. There's different laws between Jews and non-Jews. So and we'll talk about that when we get to it. The halacha, we'll talk about what the Torah says. Do I not have an obligation to his poor wife to speak to the man and maybe give him a number to a therapist? I don't know, or something. Or speak to the wife and encourage her to get support, right? So here's an example. I don't know if that's the greatest example, but yeah. If you see someone, if you're in a store and you see someone shoplifting, you just carry on with your business, or do you alert someone, right? I mean, we have a responsibility. We are the purple jacket people. So here's another one. I'll give you the quote. There is a mitzvah to relieve a neighbor of his burden and help to unload his beast. Okay, so, and I mean, my neighbors have dogs. I mean, some of them are big, but okay, in the older days, right? If you see your neighbor toiling and he has this heavy burden, you must go and help him relieve that heavy load. You can't just like, how we're just, it's so different nowadays. We're in and out of our cars. We're like, we don't look. If we don't need to, don't see, don't hear, like we don't say anything, right? That's not the society that we want to live in. We know with psychology that when terrible things have happened, there's so many bystanders and everyone is thinking someone else is going to make the phone call. Someone else is going to pitch in. No, we need to be the first responder. Okay.
Could have turned out. I'm driving it on. Beautiful Lincoln. And as I'm looking at the car, I see an arm come out the passenger window and they throw out a bag of garbage. So as it so happened, we stopped at the stoplight and I'm right next to this car. And I see the driver's window is open and I look over to him and I said, you've got such a beautiful car. Thank you. I said, it didn't really become you to throw that out the window. As it turned out, it was a very nicely dressed, but a very big black man, and he could have taken out his gun and shot me dead too. But in actual fact, what happened is he said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry." He says, "I wasn't thinking clearly," and he was really sorry. So it all worked out for the best. I'm sure he will not throw out any more bags, but it's also like kind of a little bit.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. That is totally okay. So back to our conversation. Okay, so I think we're getting a bit of an understanding, and it's important to kind of break it up so we know where we're going with it. Because when we think super Jew, we think the more pious you are, the more connected to God you are. God himself is telling us that is not the only thing that matters, right? And we see that with the flood and with the Tower of Babel, how God reacted, right? Both are very, very important, like that word spirituality. We need the spirit, we need the ritual. We can't have one without the other. But it's really important that we focus on our interpersonal relationships. So there's something that gets in our way, and that is ourselves. It's our character, our midot, our character traits. They seem to always trip us up. You see, we would ideally want to do all these things and be welcoming and be giving and all of that. But what happens when we go all the way back to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, when they sinned, evil and good together. I hear one of you. I'm just going to mute you all.
Hey, Eve, we can't hear you. You muted yourself.
Mute. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So it's the character. That's where we get stuck. Okay, so that's what we're going to be also bringing in lots of different lessons, lots of different teachings on our character. Because if we want to build our world, build this part of our Judaism, this very, very vital part of between man and our fellow man, we need to get out of our way. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys some traits right now, and I want you to shout out what the opposite trait is. Okay, the opposite of it. So peace, argument, okay, war, okay, what we call in Hebrew machloket. We're going to be speaking about that, okay, because the goal is peace. What happens very often is argument or conflict, okay? So those are two that are opposite each other. Truth, lies or falsehood, okay? So those are also, we're going to be looking at those. Anger. She said happy. Resolution. Peace. Equanimity. I was going to be speaking about anger and patience. Okay, so that we could kind of pull apart those two. Okay. Conceit. Humility. One of the greatest traits to have, right? We know Moses was considered the most humble of all men. He was so great. Giving. Selfishness, stinginess, okay? Giving and receiving. Giving and receiving could be one. We'll talk about giving. We'll do work on this. So giving and not giving, being stingy. Yeah, okay. Evil speech, huge topic in Judaism. Huge books and books written on this topic. Okay, what's the opposite of that? Pure speech, okay? So one of the topics that we're going to talk about is silence. It's a very highly held character trait to be able to stay silent in the moment, especially when you want to like boom, you know? Okay. Courage. Weakness or powerless, okay? Self-respect. Shame, or maybe even self-harm. Self-criticism. Self-critique. That could be a good thing. Or I'm trying to go extreme. We're going to talk about self-respect, and we'll talk about the flip of the coin. Okay, so but there's lots of words, but you guys get it. Cruelty. Good, or compassion. Okay, so these are some of the character traits, some of the mitzvot. Now this is really important, and I think we'll close with this. Great sages. Okay, and I'm going to quote now two. One of them is Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. He was the forefather of the Musar movement. His famous quote was, "Character is a person's only real possession." Isn't that strong? It's all that we have. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter says, character is a person's only real possession. And here's one more quote, and this one is just as good. And this one was said by the Vilna Gaon, who lived in the 1700s. The Gaon, do you know the word Gaon? Gaon is a giant, a brilliant mind, a genius, okay? The genius of Vilna from the 1700s, like the Jew of that era, he says, and this is so powerful, if we need to like engrave this on our hearts and like write it on our refrigerators, the entire purpose of our existence is to overcome our negative traits. The entire purpose of our existence. So much so that recently, two of the greatest sages in Jerusalem, Rav Shach and Rav Friedlander, two big, well-known rabbis, they got together and they exchanged a few emotional words. And one of them, Rabbi Friedlander, was at the end of his life. And he shares with his friend, his colleague, Rabbi Shach, he says, the doctors are telling me that I only have 2 weeks left to live. What should I work on? What should I do for the last 2 weeks of my life? And the answer that Rav Shach gives, without missing a beat, no hesitation, within a split second, he has a smile on his face. And Rabbi Shach says, work on your character. We are obligated to toil and perfect our character till our very last day of our life. Could you imagine this conversation between two great men that are, just like, what would you say? What would be the last thing you would want to work on? But our sages have told us if we could even change one trait, then we had a successful life. So I want you now, we're gonna end. We're gonna start next week with the first trait, the first place that we're gonna start, and that is love. Okay, love. On the flip side, we'll talk about anger, we'll talk about hatred, we'll talk about cruelty, because we have all of those, and we want to love. And the Torah commands us to love our fellow as we love ourselves. Is that even possible? Yeah. I think it is recording. Yeah. The Vilna Gaon says, the entire purpose of our existence is to overcome our negative traits. So next week, we are going to be starting with the trait of love, loving our fellow Jew as we love ourselves, or loving our fellow, because it actually goes beyond just our inner circle. It goes beyond. So that's where we're going to continue next week. And I thank you so much for coming. Thank you for learning with me. And I'm so excited for this. Julie?
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Eve.
And then we have so many great classes coming up. So take a look.
Oh, that's right. It is on Zoom. It is on Zoom. Forgive me, but her class is changing from 11 to 12 to 11:15 to 12:15, 15 minutes later. So I wanted to make an announcement. 18. Laura's going to be Thursday morning at 11:15 instead of 11. So I wanted to get that out there. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.